Have you ever destroyed yourself simply because you spoke too much? A careless word, a burst of anger, a confession made in weakness, and suddenly what was once yours becomes a weapon against you. Machiavelli once warned, "He who cannot control himself will always be ruled by another." The modern world glorifies expression. Speak your truth, they say. Be open, be vulnerable. But look closer. The more you reveal, the more they learn your pattern. The more they understand you, the easier you are to break. Because every word you give away is a key, and someone out there is quietly collecting them all. We live in an era where everyone shouts to be seen, but only a few realize attention is not freedom. It's a leash. And in a world that demands noise, silence becomes an act of rebellion. This is not a video about being cold. It's a lesson in mastery, in learning how to control your mouth, your mind, your emotions, and your money. For pillars, for forms of power. The same foundation Machiavelli used to turn chaos into order and vulnerability into dominance. Because true strength isn't about what you say. It's about what you choose to withhold. And not every strong man survives. Only those who can rule themselves. So listen carefully. We do not begin with noise. We begin with silence. Silence is not weakness. It is the most disciplined form of power. Every word you speak reveals something. Your emotions, your limits, your fears. That's why Machiavelli believed the first law of survival was not courage but restraint. Because the moment you speak without control, you hand your enemies the blueprint of your mind. Think about it. How many times have you confessed too much? Not because you trusted someone, but because you couldn't stand the weight of silence. How many times did your honesty become the very tool that someone later used to hurt you? The world wants you loud, impulsive, exposed. It feeds on your need to explain, to justify, to be understood. But when you talk, you bleed, and the predators always smell blood first. We live in a time where everyone performs, but no one observes. Everyone wants to be heard, but no one listens. Yet those who master silence rule both worlds. Nietzsche once said, "Everything deep loves a mask." Machiavelli agreed. He taught that a ruler must hide his true intentions, not out of deceit, but out of strategy. Because transparency in a world like this is a form of suicide. Silence is not the absence of words. It is the presence of control. It's the pause before the strike, the calm before the storm, the invisible line between wisdom and disaster. A wise man doesn't speak to be understood. He observes, measures, and waits. And when he finally speaks, every word lands like a blade. Remember this, impulsive words are emotional exhibitionism, a form of self-destruction disguised as sincerity. Every time you rush to respond, you surrender territory inside your own mind. But the one who waits, who breathes before reacting, turns silence into armor. You don't need to argue to win. You don't need to explain to be right, because silence terrifies the insecure. It confuses the manipulative. It commands respect without a single sound. Think of the great strategists, Caesar, Napoleon, the generals, even the spiritual masters. None of them were talkers. They used silence like a weapon to observe patterns, to control rooms, to create tension that spoke louder than words ever could. When you stop talking, you force the world to reveal itself. Because in your quiet, others start to speak. And that's when you truly see who they are. So from this moment on, don't use your mouth to defend your worth. Use your silence to define it. Let others exhaust themselves trying to understand you. Let them fill the air while you build your empire in the stillness. The world believes silence is submission. Let them, because the lion doesn't explain the roar before it comes. He just waits and strikes when the time is right. When the mouth is calm, the mind begins to speak. And that's where the real war begins. When the mouth falls silent, the real noise begins inside your head. That's where the true enemy lives. Not outside, not in others, but within the endless chatter of your own thoughts. You think you're thinking freely. You're not. Your mind has been hijacked by habits, memories, and voices that aren't yours. They whisper doubts, replay old scenes, rewrite pain as truth. And the worst part, you believe them. Machiavelli never wrote directly about the mind, but every page of The Prince breathes one message. Control begins within. Because the man who cannot govern his impulses will always be governed by those who know how to provoke them. Your mind is a palace, but most of the time it's occupied by thieves. Every distraction, every comparison, every craving, a small invasion. You call it routine. Machiavelli would call it occupation. Look around. Everyone claims they want peace, yet they live as slaves to stimulation. Endless scrolling, endless reacting, endless noise. The system doesn't need to chain you. It just needs to keep you thinking about something else. That's why controlling your mind isn't about thinking positive. That's cheap advice for a world addicted to comfort. The goal isn't happiness. It's command. Command over which thoughts deserve to stay, and which must be executed without mercy. When a thought appears, ask it one question. Does this strengthen me or weaken me? If it weakens you, eliminate it coldly like a general removing a traitor. Because every weak thought tolerated today becomes a habit tomorrow, and every habit tolerated becomes a cage. Dostoevsky once said, "The human mind is more dangerous than any knife because it bleeds in silence." You bleed every time you replay old humiliation. You bleed when you let guilt feed on memory. You bleed when you allow fantasy to replace focus. To master your mind, you must first accept this. You are not your thoughts. You are the one who decides which thought lives and which dies. A disciplined mind doesn't silence every voice. It simply ignores the ones that don't serve the mission. Train it like a soldier. Wake it up with clarity. Feed it with purpose. And when chaos comes, you don't panic because the battlefield is already yours. Every day, your attention is currency. And right now, the world is stealing it from you. Companies, ideologies, drama, all fighting to rent a piece of your mind. You must choose to be the landlord, not the tenant. Because attention shapes destiny. What you focus on expands. Feed anger and it grows teeth. Feed fear and it builds walls. Feed discipline. And soon chaos has no place left to live. The mind is not your prison unless you let it be. You are the gatekeeper, the ruler, the sovereign. And Machiavelli's lesson is simple. Control your thoughts or someone else will. When the mind obeys, emotions fall in line. Because what the mind tolerates, the heart imitates. So ask yourself, who commands your inner kingdom? If you can't answer that with certainty, it's time to move deeper because the next battlefield is even more unpredictable. The realm of emotion. Do not mistake emotional honesty for emotional mastery. They are not the same. People tell you to feel everything, to follow your heart, as if emotion were a compass that never fails. But Machiavelli and every strategist who ever survived power knew the truth. Emotion is a storm, not a guide. It will make you speak before thinking, fight before calculating, and surrender before the war even begins. You've lived this, haven't you? You said something in anger and lost more than you gained. You trusted someone too quickly and paid with disappointment. You mistook your empathy for connection, and they mistook your openness for weakness. Emotion, when uncontrolled, is not human. It's possession. Carl Jung called it being possessed by the shadow. You think you're expressing yourself, but in reality, you're being used by the very force you refuse to confront. Machiavelli would say, a ruler must seem virtuous, not necessarily be so. In other words, your emotions are masks, and the power lies not in wearing them, but in choosing when to put them on. When you are angry, the world studies you. When you are sad, it tests you. When you are too happy, it plots against you. Because transparency, emotional transparency, is the most expensive luxury in a world built on control. You believe that showing what you feel makes you authentic. It does not. It makes you predictable. And the predictable are always the first to fall. To master emotion is not to repress it. It's to command it like a general commands his army. The disciplined feel everything, but they act only when strategy demands it. Imagine your anger as fire. If you release it too soon, it burns your hands. If you contain it, it becomes energy, pressure, focus. When released at the right time, it forges steel. Joy can make you careless. Sadness can make you soft. Fear can make you small. But awareness, pure awareness, turns each emotion into a tool, not a master. Every empire that collapsed began with one ruler who confused emotion for truth. He acted out of pride or pain or pity and forgot that the throne rewards restraint, not reaction. Ask yourself this: how many decisions in your life came from strategy and how many from impulse? How many bridges did you burn to feel understood? How many times did you trade power for the comfort of being heard? Power doesn't live in those moments. It lives in the pause, the breath between what you feel and what you choose to show. Control doesn't kill emotion. It gives it direction. Because when the storm passes, only those who stayed still will know where to rebuild. But there's one more battlefield where emotion becomes invisible, where even self-control starts to bend. It's not about what you say, not even about what you feel. It's about what you value. And nothing exposes value like money. Money, the quiet dictator of modern life. It commands obedience without raising its voice. It doesn't shout. It whispers and everyone listens. You think you control it, but most of the time it controls you, because money isn't paper. It's emotion disguised as logic. It is fear dressed as responsibility, vanity masked as ambition, and desperation pretending to be drive. Machiavelli never wrote a book on economics, yet everything he taught was about power. And in today's world, money is power's camouflage. He would have said, the one who depends on others for survival kneels before them by choice. Look closer at your life. How many times have you stayed silent in humiliation just to protect your paycheck? How many dreams have you archived because the numbers didn't agree? And when money finally came, how quickly did it vanish into things that screamed status but whispered nothing about strength? That's the trick of the modern age. Money promises freedom, but rewards obedience. It lets you decorate your cage so you forget it's still a cage. We buy to impress those who don't care. We spend to feel valuable. We consume to escape our own emptiness and call it progress. Machiavelli would smirk at that. He'd say, power does not live in what is seen. It lives in what is stored, because the truly powerful never flaunt what they have. They use it quietly, strategically, invisibly. They let the illusion of poverty protect the reality of control. Money in its purest form is not wealth. It's leverage. It is not meant to decorate your ego. It's meant to buy your independence. Think of it like a sword. In the hands of the undisciplined, it cuts them first. In the hands of the wise, it becomes a shield, silent, sharp, and decisive. The problem is not earning, it's attachment. Because when your mood depends on your balance, you are no longer a man. You are an employee of your own anxiety. Real wealth is not measured by what you can buy, but by what you can refuse. The rich man is not the one who owns much, but the one who can walk away without fear. Machiavelli would teach you to appear humble, to avoid envy, to hide strength behind moderation. Because the moment you flaunt, you invite attack. And the moment you depend, you lose negotiation. So build quietly, save more than you show, invest more than you consume. Because one day when the crowd panics, you will act with calm precision. That's not luck. That's discipline compounded into power. And remember, money will never define your worth, but it will expose your weakness. The first step to power is mastering your finances. The final step is mastering your presence. Because when money speaks for you, you no longer need to raise your voice. You just enter the room and everything adjusts. Presence is silent authority. It's the weight you carry without speaking, the energy that enters the room before you do. Most people think presence is about charisma, appearance, or confidence. It's not. Those are decorations. Presence is something deeper, the byproduct of a mind that no longer leaks energy. You've seen it before. Someone walks into a space, says nothing, and yet everyone adjusts. No noise, no demand, no performance, just an invisible force that makes others pay attention. That force isn't magic. It's mastery. It's the accumulation of every battle fought in silence, every impulse resisted, every emotion controlled, every truth spoken at the right time. Presence is the echo of discipline. You cannot fake it. You can imitate confidence, but not command. Because command isn't what you do. It's what you are when you no longer need to prove anything. People confuse presence with dominance, but dominance needs witnesses. Presence doesn't. Presence is a calm in a room full of noise. the eye of the storm that never moves, the stillness that makes chaos bow. You build it by subtraction, not addition. Subtract over talking. Subtract over explaining. Subtract the need to justify. Each thing you remove increases your gravity. Machiavelli understood this perfectly. He wrote that a ruler should appear strong, appear composed, appear wise even when the heart trembles. Why? Because the world obeys perception long before it obeys truth. And the one who can hold his frame when others shake commands respect without asking. That is presence. To develop it, begin here. Control your body. Control your tone. Control your eyes. When you walk, do not rush. When you speak, do not fill silence. Every pause you hold becomes a signal of certainty, because in a world of noise, stillness is intimidating, and those who are intimidated will always submit. First emotionally, then mentally. Presence doesn't mean emotionless. It means selective emotion. You feel, but you choose when to show it. You care, but you never beg. You love, but you never lose yourself. That balance between care and attachment is what turns ordinary men into enigmas. And enigmas rule rooms without raising their voices. When presence becomes consistent, you no longer chase opportunity. It gravitates toward you. People listen differently. Doors open faster, not because they love you, but because they sense you cannot be moved. You don't have to intimidate anyone. You simply remind them quietly that you answer to no one. But presence alone isn't enough, because gravity without structure collapses. And what gives presence its spine is discipline. Discipline is the invisible architecture of freedom. It is what keeps your power from collapsing under its own weight. Without discipline, presence becomes performance. Without discipline, silence becomes avoidance. Without discipline, control becomes illusion. Machiavelli knew this. He believed that greatness wasn't born from talent. It was built brick by brick through repetition, sacrifice, and restraint. He would say, "He who cannot command himself cannot command others." Discipline is not punishment. It's alignment. It's the art of choosing what truly matters again and again, even when desire whispers otherwise. It's waking up when the body resists. It's staying quiet when the ego wants to roar. It's finishing what you start, not because it feels good, but because you said you would. Most people confuse motivation for strength, but motivation is seasonal. It comes and goes. Discipline is eternal. It does not negotiate. It doesn't care about your mood, your fatigue, your fears. It moves forward like a machine made of will. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, you sharpen your inner weapon. You reinforce your command. You remind your mind who's in charge. And over time, that consistency becomes identity. People will see you differently, not because you speak louder, but because your life becomes proof of everything you claim to be. Machiavelli's ideal leader was not the loud conqueror. It was the calm architect, the man who builds quietly, strategically, while others drown in chaos. Understand this. Discipline is not about restriction. It's about control of rhythm. You cannot master the storm if you move like one. You must learn to pace yourself, to move with precision, to pause when needed, to strike only when necessary. Even silence requires discipline, because every pause you take is a test. Can you sit with discomfort? Can you resist the urge to fill the void? Can you wait until the world reveals its hand before you play yours? That's why discipline is more than a habit. It's a way of breathing. It's how you turn chaos into choreography. It's how you move through life, not reacting, but designing. And slowly, people start to notice. Your tone is calmer, your timing sharper, your focus unshakable. That's not luck. That's years of repetition in the dark. Discipline is what separates power from potential. It transforms impulse into execution, vision into empire. But even the most disciplined man must learn one final skill, the art of concealment, because power that is seen too clearly invites its own destruction. You've built control. You've built order. Now it's time to hide it. Power that's visible is vulnerable. Power that's hidden endures. Machiavelli understood this long before the modern world did. He knew that once people see your strength, they'll start plotting how to take it. So he taught his students one simple law. Never show all your cards, not even to those you trust. Because the moment they can read you, they can predict you. And once they can predict you, they can control you. Concealment is not deceit. It's design. It's the art of appearing ordinary while quietly moving the pieces of destiny. It's the still face of the chess player who already knows the next 10 moves. Think about it. How often do people overshare their plans, their pain, their progress, and then wonder why the world reacts before they're ready? When you speak too soon, you dilute your momentum. When you show too much, you invite resistance. And when you let others see your entire process, they begin to believe your success belongs to them. True control is quiet. It doesn't need validation. It operates under the illusion of normalcy, like a current beneath calm water, unseen, unstoppable. The wise do not hide out of fear. They hide out of strategy. They let others underestimate them, because nothing disarms faster than false weakness. Appear soft and the world lowers its guard. Appear humble and envy passes you by. Appear uncertain and they reveal their confidence too early. Meanwhile, you're collecting information, calculating timing, preparing to strike when the field is clear. That's not manipulation. That's self-preservation in a world that punishes transparency. Remember, the strong man doesn't tell you he's strong. He lets the silence do the talking. He lets the results appear as if by accident. And when the world finally notices, it's too late to stop him. Even your emotions must be disguised. When you feel rage, breathe. When you feel excitement, observe. When you feel fear, hold your posture, because showing emotion is showing data, and data is the modern blueprint of control. Machiavelli would tell you, do not fight for power. Become the environment it breathes in. Invisibility is influence's highest form. Because when no one can locate your center, no one can hit your core. Concealment is not silence. It's orchestration. Every gesture calculated. Every word intentional. Every absence louder than any speech. When you master concealment, you begin to live inside the minds of others rent-free. They wonder what you're thinking. They question what you're planning. They talk about you even when you're gone. And that is how mystery becomes command. But even power hidden too long becomes stagnant. There comes a moment when the mask must move, when silence must strike. And that moment is everything, because timing is the blade that separates control from collapse. Machiavelli believed that timing is worth more than talent. He wrote, "Fortune is like a river. If you build your dam too late, you drown too early and the land dries. Power, like water, depends on rhythm. Those who move at the wrong time are punished not by fate, but by their own impatience. In a world addicted to speed, patience becomes rebellion. Everyone wants to act, post, respond, react now. But the wise wait. They let chaos burn itself out before making a single move. The man who cannot wait is already lost. Because when you move from emotion, you're playing someone else's game. But when you move from stillness, you control the board. Timing is a weapon, and like all weapons, it cuts both ways. Act too soon and your blade hits air. Act too late and it breaks against the armor of circumstance. The master strategist acts once, and only once, but precisely. You've seen it. The person who stays silent in argument and speaks one line that ends it. The trader who does nothing for months and doubles his fortune in a single move. The leader who seems invisible until one decision shifts the course of everything. That's not luck. That's orchestration. Because they understand that the world runs on emotional time. But true power moves on strategic time. To master timing, you must master perception. You must learn to read energy, rhythm, and fatigue. To know when others are acting out of emotion and when they're vulnerable to influence. You must see before you act, not act before you see. Machiavelli warned, it is not enough to know what must be done. One must know when. Because wisdom without patience is noise, and patience without courage is decay. You need both. Stillness to wait, fire to strike. Timing is built on 3 elements. Observation, tension, precision. Observation gives you the map. Tension builds anticipation in your opponent. Precision decides when to cut. Imagine an archer. He doesn't release the arrow because he's ready. He releases it because the wind is right. That is timing, the marriage between readiness and opportunity. But here's the paradox. Those obsessed with the right time often never act. They mistake overthinking for control and end up paralyzed by their own analysis. So remember, timing is not waiting forever. It's waiting just long enough. The goal is not perfection. The goal is impact. There's a silence before every explosion, a calm before every revelation. If you learn to listen for that silence, you'll never miss your moment again. And when your moment comes, strike clean. No hesitation, no apology, no explanation. Because hesitation after waiting is just fear in disguise. But after the strike, another danger appears, the intoxication of victory. That's when most fall, because they forget the one rule that keeps power alive. Withdraw before the applause. Machiavelli wrote, "He who knows when to withdraw will live to fight again." That single sentence separates the conqueror from the corpse. Everyone wants to advance. Few know when to stop because ego always whispers just one more word, one more victory, one more moment in the light. And that whisper has buried more empires than war itself. The art of withdrawal is not cowardice. It is command. It is the discipline to leave before the world grows tired of your presence. It is the wisdom to disappear when curiosity is still alive. Because the moment you overstay, power turns into performance and respect turns into routine. In power, there are three kinds of exits, each one a different kind of mastery. First, withdrawal from confrontation. You do not respond to every insult. You do not fight every battle. You let small minds exhaust themselves trying to provoke reaction. Silence in these moments is a mirror that makes them face their own insignificance. Second, withdrawal from the crowd. The crowd is addicted to noise, to constant validation, to chaos. But when you step away, you regain perspective. You begin to see the machinery who leads, who follows, who feeds on attention. Machiavelli would tell you to control the crowd. You must not stand inside it. You cannot rule the storm while you're trapped in the rain. Third, withdrawal from emotion. This is the hardest one. When anger rises, you leave the room, not because you're weak, but because the room no longer deserves your presence. When sadness comes, you observe it, but you don't bow to it. To master emotion, you must sometimes step outside yourself. That's not detachment. That's awareness sharpened into weaponry. Every withdrawal creates space, and space is power. Absence is louder than noise. Disappearance builds demand. When you vanish at your peak, people begin to imagine you. And imagination always paints you larger than reality ever could. The strong know this. Overexposure is decay. Mystery is magnetic. Those who are always available become invisible. But those who retreat with intention become unforgettable. Look at nature. Even the sun must set to be desired again. Even the tide must pull back before returning stronger. Power obeys the same rhythm. You retreat not to escape but to reform, reload, and return. When you withdraw, you deny the world access to your energy. You're reminded that your attention, your presence is currency, and not everyone can afford it. Machiavelli would call that the highest form of control, not ruling others, but ruling your own availability, to appear when needed, to vanish when expected, and to let absence whisper what words could never say. But withdrawal is not the end. It's preparation for the coronation, the quiet ceremony where power no longer needs proof. When all lessons, silence, mind, emotion, discipline, timing, fuse into one unshakable being, this is where the journey turns inward, the final transformation, the moment you no longer chase control. Because you are control, the ashes have cooled, the noise has faded. There are no more eyes to impress, no more hands to applaud. Only you standing alone in the silence you once feared, now wearing it like a crown. This is the moment Machiavelli called coronatio in umbra, the coronation in the dark. It happens when no one is watching, when the applause is stopped, when power no longer needs performance. You've walked a full circle. You've learned to guard your mouth. You've learned to discipline your mind. You've tamed your emotions, mastered your timing, and vanished at will. You have entered the final stage where control is no longer something you practice. It's something you are. No one crowns you. You do it yourself without ceremony, without noise, without witnesses. Because power born in silence fears no audience. Look at yourself now. You don't rush to prove. You don't chase to convince. You don't react to be seen. You move with calm precision, and the world adjusts around your rhythm. Machiavelli once wrote, "He who controls himself controls fortune." He didn't mean luck. He meant alignment. The quiet synchronization between who you are inside and how you move outside. That's what makes a man unshakable. You've earned that silence. It's no longer empty. It's full of understanding, of scars, of restraint, of vision. Every battle you fought within yourself has shaped the posture you carry now. Straight, still, unapologetic. You no longer seek justice. You create order. You no longer beg to be understood. You impose clarity. You no longer crave affection. You command respect. That's not arrogance. That's evolution. In this darkness, you don't hide. You reign. Because the man who conquers his shadow has nothing left to fear. Not even the light. Now whisper these words. Not for the world, but for the echo inside your own mind. My mouth is calm. My mind is sharp. My emotions obey. My money serves me. Asterisk from this day forward. I do not chase control. I am controlled. Asterisk. That's the vow of the awakened. Not to be perfect, but to be precise. Not to be loved, but to be free. Not to be loud, but to be inevitable. The coronation is complete. The crowd will never see it, but they will feel it. Because true kings don't announce themselves. They simply move differently. And if you reach this point, it means a part of you has already changed. The part that no longer negotiates with weakness. The part that no longer runs from silence. The part that finally understands. Freedom is not the absence of rules. It's the mastery of self. So before you leave this moment, take one breath. Feel the weight of your own stillness. And remember, control is not a destination. It's a daily decision. And today, you've already made it. If these words found you, they were meant to walk quietly. The crown fits. And before you fade back into the noise of the world, remember this silence is not the end. It's only the beginning of a different kind of power. If these words found you, they were meant to walk quietly. The crown fits. And before you fade back into the noise of the world, remember this silence is not the end. It's only the beginning of a different kind of power.